Hello, I'm Mike and this is Will with the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And we're looking at issue 32 of Age of Sigmar Stormbringer magazine today. This issue came with a whopping 20 Moonclan Shooters for the Forces of Destruction, so you'll be able to see them in today's game, where we'll also be testing out the core rules for Magic. Looking through the issue first, we have more background on the Gloomspite Gitz. They reside in all the clammy corners of the various realms, and underground cities are long forgotten, and it's very hard to shift them once they take root in the various caves and such. And then background on some of the residents, so you can expect there's all the various grots patrolling the upper levels. The bosses get to get the best caves where they grow all their fungi and keep all their loot. In the very deepest parts reside the Troggoths, the regenerating mysterious creatures. And there's a little bit there about the hated sun, so we have what they call it Glareface Fizzlegit, sort of the opposite of the bad moon. So grots hate the sun and try to hide from it as much as possible. And then the squigs and the various other squig-related beasts that they harvest or that they grow and maintain. And then background on the Varan Spire. So we learned a bit about the Slaves to Darkness before. This is the fortress of Archaon the Everchosen, sort of Grand Master of all the Slaves to Darkness. The Varan Spire is a citadel in the 8 points, which is in the middle of all the mortal realms, connects all the 8 mortal realms. And there's a bunch of realm gates there through which Archaon sends various armies to try and conquer them. So it's the 8 points are a sort of sub-realm, and the Varan Spire is Archaon's fortress, his base of operations. So some background on Archaon himself, the Everchosen of the 4 Chaos Gods, leader of their forces in the mortal realms, and a little bit about the Varan Guard, who are his personal guard and elite forces. And amidst the ruins and forests of the 8 points, various warbands fight to gain Archaon's favour. So that's basically the backstory of the Warcry sub-game. So you can see there the Iron Golems and fighting against the Untamed Beasts. So there's various Chaos Worshippers from throughout all of the mortal realms vie for power. And the battle record for the Moonclan Shootas, so you can roll a name and a trait for the boss, and obviously Moonclan Grots are vicious little creatures that delight in bringing down things that are bigger than them through weight of numbers and hails of arrows, and they do sneaky things like capture you in nets. It's just not dumb, it's not very honourable, is it?
It's just not cricket.
Yeah. And on the back side, you can give them the unit name and their traits, and then some great deeds for them. And then the build guide. This is quite an older kit, so it's sort of a different style to the newer ones. But it's very simple to put together. Each grot is is sort of 2 to 4 parts. So you have a little guide to do the boss, and there's the gong basher, and then the banner bearer, and then there's going to be 3 netters, 6 who have bows and arrows, and then another 8 who are going to be holding their bows and their quivers in either hand. And that's kind of it. You might have to do be a bit inventive to give them more unique poses, if that's what you want. They do go together fairly easily, and there shouldn't be too many gaps. And then the painting guide. So they are very easy to paint. They are mostly black, and it is actually starting with black instead of green, which I think you did for Zalbag's Gitz. The main issue is it's just going to take a long time because there's so many of them, and it says to try painting them in batches of 5 or 10, because it can get a little bit boring painting 20 models all in one go. So, as you might expect, Abaddon black for the cloak, Auric flesh for any flesh bits, and then Khajiit flesh for things like leather and handles and bows and stuff. There are some other details to pick out. So you've got Wraithbone for skulls and the nets, and any cloth or wrappings, yellow for the bad moon symbols, and lead belcher for any metal parts, and then there's a few mushrooms and such, and then going over with watches afterwards, and there's the gong as well, and breaking up a few bits of metal parts with rune or brass. And then you can see them up to this point. So now I'll hand you over to Will. We have some more of the core rules to go over and see how our new shooters work in the game.
So in this issue we've got some more of the core rules, this time the full rules for wizards and casting spells. Most of this is what we've already seen, but there are some important differences to note compared to the tutorial rules we have been using. Starting off, wizards are units with the wizard keyword. All wizards know the Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield spells, which we'll get to in a moment. When casting a spell, as we've seen, you roll 2d6, and if you equal or beat the casting value of the spell, it's successfully cast. But a new rule is miscasts, which is if the unmodified casting roll is a 2, i.e. a double 1, then the spell is miscast. The spell is not successfully cast, and the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds and may not attempt to cast any more spells in that hero phase. And unbinding is the same as we've seen before. There's also a little sidebar about when models that are not wizards can attempt to cast or unbind spells, for example, the Heroic Willpower, Heroic Action, but it does clarify that such models are not wizards for any other rules purposes. And then a formal definition of what it means for a spell to have a casting value and its effect and its range. And then we have the full rules for Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield. Mystic Shield is the same as the tutorial version, but Arcane Bolt is slightly different. So rather than just doing D3 mortal wounds at any range, after it's cast, then at the start of any one phase before the next hero phase, or before your next hero phase, you pick an enemy unit within range and visible, the range being 12 inches, and that unit suffers 1 mortal wound, or it suffers D3 if it's within 3 inches of the caster. So a slight difference to the rules we've been using so far, a little bit more subtle. And the next page is mostly about endless spells, which are kind of spell that is cast and then remains in play, but we don't get any of those with the collection, so I'm not going to go through all of these rules. If you do expand your collection with some endless spells, you will need these rules, but I'm not going to go over them for now. Similarly, units of wizards at the bottom there, we don't get any of those with the collection. So again, only relevant if you add more units to your army. And then a tutorial page, first up about miscasts, so rolling a double 1 is bad. Mystic Shield, as I said, is the same as we've seen previously. And over the page you have a full page tutorial on Arcane Bolt, so the key point here being this section at the bottom where it explains the different ranges. So in the first example, the Vindictors will take 1 mortal wound because they're more than 3 inches away, whereas in the second, the Praetors take D3 mortal wounds because they're within 3 inches. But because you have control over which phase it goes off in before your next hero phase, it does mean you can save it up until your opponent's turn. So for example, if your wizard gets charged, then they could do D3 mortal wounds to a unit that charged them and got within 3 inches. So it provides a little bit of threat to charging your wizards if you want to hold it back for that. Next up we have the warscroll for our new Moonclan Shooter unit. Being only lowly grots, they only have 1 wound with a 6+ save, and bravery 4, they move 5 inches. And shooters are armed with Moonclan bows, which have 20-inch range with 1 attack that hits on a 4, wounds on a 5, with no random 1 damage. And in melee they have a single attack that hits on a 5 and wounds on a 5 with 1 attack, though some of them can carry nets, which have 3 attacks with a 2-inch range hitting on 4s and wounding on 5s. But the main reason for taking the net is because, just like for Zarbag's Gitz, enemy units within 1 inch of the shooters have -1 to hit with melee attacks, and up to 3 in every 20 models can have a net, although that does replace their weapon option, so netters do not get to have a bow. 1 model in the unit can be a Moonclan boss, who has an extra attack with a bow, and 1 in every 20 can be an icon bearer, and you add 1 to save rolls against shooting for the unit if it has an icon bearer in it, and it can also have a gong basher, and you add 1 to run rolls for the unit if it has any gong bashers. And finally they have a special rule called loads of arrows, which means you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of their bows while they have 10 or more models, because there are so many of them shooting, they can't all possibly miss. And then a tutorial identifying the 3 command models and their effects again, and then just an example of the netters and the loads of arrows rule. And then we're on to this issue's game. So we're back in Ulgu, the Realm of Shadow, and a strange magical darkness has descended that not even the keen eyes of the Moonclan Grots can pierce, which creates both opportunities and dangers for both armies. So for the Alliance of Order, still just Stormcast, we've got the Lord Imperatant, the Knight Arcanum, the Lord Aquilor, 5 Vigilors, the Stormstrike Chariot, and 6 Gryph-hounds. And the Alliance of Destruction have the Loon Boss, the Killer Boss with Stab Grot, Zarbag and his Gitz, the 20 Moonclan Shooters, and 10 Gut Rippers. So here's our battlefield. We're deploying along the short edges of the 2 battle mats in this game, so we'll be fighting along the length of the battlefield, and there's an objective in the centre of each quadrant of the battlefield, as you can see there. Deploying as usual, and then placing the Primal Lair scenery pieces after both sides have deployed. Victory is decided by whoever has the most victory points at the end of the 5th battle round, and victory points are scored for players at the end of their turn if they have 1 or more objectives, 2 or more objectives, or more objectives than the opponent. 1 victory point for each of those 3 conditions. And our special rule is Living Night, so the darkness is swirling around and affecting different parts of the battlefield. Rolling a dice at the start of each battle round decides which of the 4 quarters is shrouded in darkness, or if you roll a 5 or 6, the whole battlefield is shrouded in darkness. For a unit in the area that's affected by this, they cannot be shot at or have spells cast at them. So here we've set up, and the objectives you can see, and the numbers we've used correspond to which quadrant of the battlefield. So Stormcast on the left, we've got the Chariot on objective 3, the Lord Imperatant, who will be more general, the Vigilors in the middle with the Knight Arcanum, the Lord Aquilor, and then the Gryph-hounds on objective 1. And then the Destruction Forces over on the right hand side.
Yeah, so this will be from left to right as you see it. We've got Zarbag's Gitz, then the Loon Boss, and Zarbag is behind him. Then all the shooters on objective 2, and I'll have the killer boss will be my general, and the gut rippers on objective 4. The shooter boss is called Yazgab, and they are Yazgab's quick fingers.
So roll off to go first, and I did finish deploying first, so I'll win anyway. And I will go first in the first battle round, so on to Stormcast turn 1.
So my dirty trick's going to be Noisy Racket.
And we have to roll to see which part of the battlefield is in darkness, so 1 to 4 will be a part of the battlefield, or 5 or 6 is all of it. 3, that's the one with the chariot in it. So we both tried for heroic leadership. I succeeded with the Lord Aquilor, the Loon Boss failed, and then I'm going to try and cast Mystic Shield with the Knight Arcanum. Succeeded with a 5, just about.
I'll try and unbind with Zarbag. Yep, that's definitely an unbind with a 12.
Then in the movement phase, most of my units have moved into Quadrant 3, so they're in the darkness and can't be shot at. The Vigilors moving their full distance forward so they can get in range of things, otherwise we're staying back mostly. The only exception being Gryph-hounds, who would have to make a big run roll to get within Quadrant 3. The letter of the rules, it does say that you just have to be within the quadrant, not wholly within, so I think just getting one model in would be sufficient, but they're actually just going to back off a bit, so they're out of range of the shooters. And then I do have some shooting with the Vigilors, who are going to shoot at the Gut Rippers. I use the Lord Aquilor's command point from heroic leadership to give them all out attack, but only 3 are in range.
And I'll use all out defense.
So only 3 shots hitting on 2s. Well, still managed to miss. And wounding on 4s because of Noisy Racket. Just 1.
5 plus armour. No, Gut Ripper takes a wound.
Yeah, they can shoot out of the quadrant that's in darkness, things that are not in darkness, just not into it. And the chariot, unfortunately, is not in range. I didn't move it far enough forward, so there's no more shooting, and nothing else to happen in my turn. So on to destruction turn 1. And I do actually gain 2 victory points at the end of my turn as well for holding 2 objectives, but that's not more than destruction at the moment. And then I'm using heroic willpower with the Lord Imperatant, although Zarbag actually only is going to be casting 1 spell this turn anyway, because he failed his roll.
And the Loon Boss got heroic leadership.
Yep.
Zarbag is going to try and cast Mystic Shield. Against it with an 8.
And I'll try and unbind with the Knight Arcanum, I suppose. Unbinds with a 9.
So, just some movement. Zarbag's Gitz are going to spend a command point. I'll use the free one I got to automatically get a 6, and then the Loon Boss and Zarbag are running to keep up with them. And these shooters also ran just to get in front of objective 2, but the Oryx are all going to stay where they are for now.
And then no shooting because everything is either out of range or ran or shadowed in darkness or whatever, and no charging obviously. So that's the end of the battle round. And the destruction side also scored 2 victory points. So rolling off for battle round 2.
I won the roll, I'm going to go first.
So on to destruction turn 2. And rolling for the darkness again.
3 again.
Ah, same place. We both succeeded on heroic leadership. Zarbag did not get an extra spell, so I decided not to go for heroic willpower this turn.
Yeah, Loon Boss did heroic leadership, so did the Lord Aquilor. So Zarbag's 1 spell is going to be Mystic Shield once again, which he gets with a 6.
What can we unbind this time? No, 6 is not enough.
I'll put that on the shooters as we're. So my Oryx are going to stay where they are for now, but the Grots are going to be much more aggressive. The Zarbag's Gitz auto ran 6 once again, get them on objective 1. The Loon Boss running along behind. Zarbag ran as well, but he's a bit slow, so he's going to hang back a bit with the shooters, who have moved up so they're all in range of the Gryph-hounds. And then in the shooting phase, they're going to shoot at the Gryph-hounds, and I'll issue all-out attack. So this is going to be 35 shots because there are 17 bowmen, because we've got 3 nets. Then they get an extra shot for having more than 10 models, and then the boss gets an extra one, so 35. Hitting on 3s because of all-out attack. It's 14 out of 18 for the first batch, and then the second batch is 17. So there's 27 hits, don't quite have enough dice, so again 2 batches. First batch of 14, wounding on 5s, getting 2. 13, getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more, so 7 wounds.
So we lose 3.5 Gryph-hounds.
Yeah, and I'm going to be super aggressive and unleash Snurk Sauton. I imagine they can't control him for too long, and there's some soft Gryph-hounds in the way. So he's going to get put out, or he's going to get unleashed there, and he's just out of range of the Lord Aquilor there, so the Gryph-hounds can squawk all they want, but nothing's going to be able to unleash hell at him, and then he'll try and charge. So Snurk's charge is a 7. That is going to be enough. So Snurk's going to go over there. Not going to issue all-out attack to him though.
Yeah, he's also not in range for the Lord Aquilor to unleash hell at him either, which is important.
So D6 attacks from Snurk, 5, hitting on 4s, getting 2, and wounding on 3s, getting 2. So that's 2d3 damage, I think. For 6.
Oh, well, that wiped them out because there's only 5 wounds left in the unit. Oh, I don't even have to make a battle shock test with them. So that leaves destruction forces in control of 3 objectives, gaining a maximum of 3 victory points. As we head into Stormcast turn 2. It's the Lord of Quillor's finest hour, while the Loon Boss generated a command point, and I can't cast any spells on any of my units, so I can't use Mystic Shield because they're all in the darkness. So I'm going to try and go for Blaze of the Heavens instead, needing a 7. Getting a 7.
Zorbag trying to bind. With a 10, yeah.
And then the whole army is advancing into the centre of the board. We're going to sort of try and cut the destruction force in half somehow, mostly by charging the shooters mostly. And when the chariot moved, the shooters redeployed, but only an inch. So they moved an inch further away.
It gets them wholly within 12 of the Loon Boss.
So on to shooting. We'll start with the Lord of Quillor. He's going to shoot at Snurk Sour Time. 4 shots, hitting on 3s, only getting 2. But wounding on 2s because it's his finest hour. We've only got 1 wound, it would have been 0.
Yeah, that's all he needs though.
Yeah, but unfortunately the Wren does kill him. Next we're going to do the Vigilors, who are going to shoot at Zarbag's Gitz. And I'll use all-out attack with them, so 5 shots hitting on 2s. Yeah, Vigilors actually have 2 shots each, and I've got that in the first turn, so we'll fix that in a minute, but the other shots get another miss, so 8. And wounding on 3s. That is 6 wounds with -1 rend.
Yeah, so there's all the bowmen dead.
Yeah, and then they had 3 more shots on the Gut Rippers from turn 1, which I'll just do now, so they were hitting on 2s at the time, and wounding on 4s at the time because of the noisy racket. Well, they got 3 wounds. But they had all that defence on them at the time.
So 5s, made 1, so 8 Gut Rippers dead.
Yeah. But you had loads of spare command points, so you would have just auto-passed the battle shock test.
Yeah.
With,
I had about 3 left at the end.
Yeah, so we won't worry about that. Back to turn 2, do the Lord Imperatant also going to shoot his stick at Zarbag's Gitz. D6 times, 6. On 2s, because the Vigilors shot at them, so he missed once. And 3s to wound. 4 more. 2 more dead.
2 dead squigs.
And Chariot will have a go as well, since we've got the bonus, so that does hit with the 2, but 2 runs to wound. Then we're on to the charge phase, where the Chariot will declare a charge first. And I have told Mike it's not going to be charging the Gut Ripper, so I'm not worrying about Scare Shields. So we're just going to roll for it, and 11. It's going into the shooters. So that only gets it within range of objective 2, but we're going to have 11 attempts to do mortal wounds to the shooters. On 4s, 6 mortal wounds. So that was the Chariot charge. The Vigilors are going to charge as well. They roll a 10. So they go like this, so we can get all of them in range. And finally the Lord of Quillor is going to declare a charge. And he rolls a 7. That is all of my charges done, and we're going to fight with the Chariot first, because otherwise these shooters could probably be pulled to be out of range. And I'll issue all-out attack with the Lord Imperatant's free 1 per turn on the Chariot to counteract the nets. So the axe hits on 3s back to, and 1 hit. And wounds on 3, that's a wound, but they do have Mystic Shield on them.
6. Lose 1.
And the Griff charges hit 3 times. And wounding on 3s. So 2 dead this time, because that will get through Mystic Shield even with the -2 rend.
We'll do the Loon Boss. He's going to issue all that attack to himself with his 3 command point. So 5 attacks on 2s.
Yeah, that's a 5.
Yep, 3 hits. 3s, 6s do a mortal wound in it.
Ooh.
It's 2 mortal wounds at the very least. Last rend.
Yep, with finest hour, that's 3s to save though, so he just takes 2 mortal wounds. It's down to 6. Now I'll do the Vigilors, and the leader does not get an extra attack in melee, actually gets an extra shot with the bows, but we're not going to go back and fix that now, we'll just do that in the future. Their shooting was reasonably effective this turn anyway. So 10 attacks with melee weapons hitting on 4s because of the nets. Well, I didn't roll any 3s, so we've got 8 hits. And wounding on 3s. Only 4 with -1, so...
4 6s. Oh, made 1. 3 dead. Bizarre. So I've just got the shooters left on the... They're all going to attack the Vigilors.
And they'll issue all that defence, because they might as well.
Yeah, I'll roll all the hits and I'll roll the wounds after, because they have different hit profiles, but all wound on 5s. So 7 slither attacks on 5s, getting 1. 3 net attacks on 4s, getting 2. And these wound on 5s, getting 1.
With a 3+ save, which I've made. So I didn't really need the command point. Anyway. And finally the Lord of Quillor, who has 5 attacks with his 2 weapons combined, because they're the same profile, which hit on 3s. Getting 3. And wound on 2s, because it's his finest hour. So they all wound.
4s, made 1. That's 2 damage each.
Yeah.
6 plus ward, made 1, so he's taken 3 damage so far.
And the Griff Charger hits 3 times. And wounds 3 times.
5s against the Griff Charger. Made 1.
2 damage. Going through.
6s. No, he did.
That's all the fighting done, but there will be some battle shot tests.
They're not.
Yeah, so spend a command point for inspiring leadership on the drop on the shooters.
Yeah, and Zarbags is slot 6, so they're going to rely.
And so at the end of the turn, I gain 3 victory points because I have now hold 3 objectives. So that means we're rolling off for battle round 3. And I rolled a 6.
Well, I didn't, so I'm just going to concede at that point because. Yeah, so if I'm going second, there's probably no point continuing because Stormcast will still maintain control of 3 objectives and they'll just kill off all those grots and then the orcs on their own aren't going to do anything.
Yeah, because I'll definitely go first in the battle round and then be able to charge things and probably just send the chariot in to hold up all the orcs while everybody else secures the rest of the battlefield because it will last a turn or 2 in melee. Mm-hmm. So yeah, probably going to be a Stormcast victory on victory points at the end. So we will recap the game for you now. Well, that was game for issue 32 of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormbringer magazine. How did you think that went?
I was probably a bit too aggressive, but I think my best plan was to try and build up a lead. I could have held back for a couple. The problem is that all my units are a move of 5, so can't. I think Snouter might be a little bit faster actually because he moves randomly, but he's hardly going to take objectives on his own. So being aggressive and taking an objective and trying to pull out a lead and try and sort of eke out a lead, I probably should have moved the killer boss over to secure objective 2 from the chariot. That was a mistake. Or moved the Oryx over as well. I think if I had gone first in the third battle round, I would have moved the Oryx over and maybe tried to hold on. Would have been able to take back objective 2 and maybe stopped you getting over to objective 4. But seeing as you went first, you'd have finished off the rest of the shooters.
Yeah, I didn't have much spare capacity at the start of turn 3. If you had been able to re-secure objective 2, then I might not have been able to take it back and I wouldn't have been able to send anybody over to 4. Well, the Lord Imperator might have got there eventually, but probably too late to make a difference.
And even if something like the Loom boss had held on for another turn, that would have been useful. But yeah, it's not too surprising that he died. He's not terribly durable. Yeah. And shooters aren't going to last long in melee. They are not good in melee, even with nets, and not all that great at shooting, to be honest. I mean, I know they did a decent amount of damage to the Griffhounds, but Griffhounds have no armour. And if I'd shot them at anything else, I think you would have just all-out defenced, and they would have done very little damage.
I was a bit worried when you did take objective 1, because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do about it, but then I sort of came up with the plan kind of on the fly, actually, to charge the shooters and just hope to do a lot of damage to them, which I did, because the chariot rolled tremendously high for its charge roll, and then the vigilals, and it did a reasonable job in melee. That and shooting at Zarbags Gitz, so you could only keep 1 unit on the field with Inspiring Presence, so both of those things paid off for me, but it was a little bit of a gamble. Either of those 2 things could have gone much worse and not have worked. Because if I hadn't taken 2 objectives in that one turn, you probably would have been ahead on victory points with not an easy way for me to get back. My sort of plan, if I'd been able to have the initiative and you hadn't been able to get all the way over to my objective, was to just kind of skirmish for a couple of turns, keep shooting with things and send the Griffhounds in, and maybe I can send the Griffhounds and the chariot in the same turn, because the chariot is not going to get killed in a single round of attacks, so the Griffhounds can go first and then run away.
Yeah, you have the shooting advantage, and I'm not fast enough. I have to get out at some point.
And if the Griffhounds had charged Zarbags Gitz or the shooters and then been able to attack and then run away without reply, then they have a lot of attacks, so they can actually do quite a lot of damage to lightly armoured Grots. But yeah, the shooters, as you say, unfortunately they're just not that effective.
Well, they're pretty not too effective against Stormcast, is the issue. Is that?
I mean, we haven't learned about army building yet, but obviously, as you might guess, they're quite cheap. You get 20 models for relatively little investment.
I mean, for reference, they cost less than 5 vigilals. Yeah, incidentally, one of the great deeds it lists in the magazine is to fire 40 shots with them in one turn, which isn't going to be possible because you don't have enough bows, because the nets replace 3 of the bowmen. The nets are useful to have, so they can be helpful to support another unit, but yeah, I don't know, if I were fielding shooters, I think I would go for all bows rather than just adding in a single net. I think the nets would be much more useful if you went for stabbers, which were the melee version, which you do get the parts for. And this is a decent value for money. Not sure what shooters are these days, or Moonclan Grots, whatever the kit's called. Probably in the 20 sort of pounds, so it is definitely good value for money if you want lots of them.
If you're building a Moonclan army, you will need a lot of Grots, so this is a good way to get lots of them.
And they are very quick to paint because they are mostly black. Just the issue is that there's tons of them. And they are a bit of an older kit as well, so that probably does make them a bit cheaper. You might struggle a bit to make them all look unique. I mean, they probably are meant to look like a massive swarm.
When it's Grots, it doesn't really look that bad. There's just so many of them, and they're so small that you can't really tell. Anyway, I think that's it for this game and this video, so let us know what you thought in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, to keep up to date with the latest ones. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.